everyone. I'm Mark Agins with IMAGINiT, and I will be your host for this three-part webinar series highlighting our Clarity for Revit software and how our clients like LPA are benefiting from it. In addition to today's webinar, we will be meeting again on March 4th and as well on March 11th. Before I introduce our guest speakers for today, I'm be showing just a quick 2-minute video to introduce you to both Clarity and LPA.
IMAGINiT Clarity is technology purpose-built to enhance your experience working on Revit and BIM 360 projects. Clarity offers AEC firms the opportunity to gain deep project insight, protect model integrity, and collaborate more effectively while regaining hundreds of hours per project per year. Complex workflows and manual repetitive tasks can eat up valuable billable hours. Assign these workflows and tasks to Clarity and quickly see increases to productivity and efficiency. Inflated file sizes from overmodeling or increased warnings can negatively impact the integrity of the model, resulting in lost work and project delays. IMAGINiT Clarity monitors Revit model health, alerting BIM managers to potential issues before they become major problems. Dive into rich BIM data and gain a better understanding of the project. Dashboards, reports, and analytics inside Clarity, along with integrations to business intelligence software, help firms find areas for improvement. Through automation, health metrics, and data analytics, IMAGINiT Clarity helps improve project outcomes, resulting in a better experience for you and your clients. LPA is a fully integrated building design firm working together to design innovative environments that work better, do more with less, and improve people's lives. LPA adopted IMAGINiT Clarity in 2016 to improve project performance. Clarity's health metrics helped LPA be proactive and overcome common frustrations and struggles experienced by many Revit users.
Today's speakers from IMAGINiT Technologies will include Joe Eichenseer and Matt Mason, who are our subject matter experts. Each of them have been with our industry for over 20 years. After our speakers' presentation today, they'll be available to address any of your technical questions during that Q&A. Director of Inspire Design at LPA, who will be sharing with us how they are using Clarity to proactively approach to project performance. Nick, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Mark, for the introduction. So as Mark said, LPA is a fully integrated design firm, and what that means to us is we have all the disciplines in-house. And for building design, we design pretty much anything except for single-family residential. And really what, for me, coming to LPA almost 6 years ago, that was kind of an eye-opening part of like having to work with all of the engineers and treat them all on equal footing. And you saw some other the presenters that are going to be up there. Kenny from TK1 and I have actually gone through the idea of what project health was and everything before. But you know, before LPA, I was working at architecture and landscape architecture and interiors only firms. And so things were different. Like if it was a structural problem, you just made the structural engineer fix it. But now if it's a structural problem, we have to figure out how to fix it. And so if you look at, for us, life before Clarity, like we've always talked about the idea of like project health checks and, you know, what does that look like? And so when I came in 6 years ago, we had these project health checks that we looked at, like how are things going? And it was a lot of really fuzzy data. It was like too many links in project. Well, what's too many? I think it's 2, and Alejandro thought it was 10. And file is too big. Well, what is file is too big? We didn't have any empirical measurements. So we went through and developed a lot of like very specific empirical measurements, but it turned into forms for each discipline and forms after forms after forms. And really what it came down to is we never did this because it was about 4 hours worth of work per model, per project. And for us, we have at least 3, sometimes 4, 5, 6 models per building. And if you go to like the Agnews campus, we've got something like 87 different files that all make up this singular high school, elementary school, middle school campus. There's no way we'd ever get around to this. So we would do this kind of reactively. Somebody said, hey, there's a problem. We would go look at it and kind of give them some information on where to go and look at it. And so, that would all roll up into this master scorecard, and it was a percentage of what people didn't really know. And we always had this like, oh, well, everybody's always getting a 60%. It's a D. What does that mean? So all of our models suck. So we were trying to figure out like what's going on, but you couldn't do enough of these to get enough data to figure out where that really true threshold was. And then on top of that, we also had like clash detection and all these other things that we're trying to go on, and just automating that and getting into it regularly was just pulling us away from regularly doing anything with project health. So, then you come along and it's like, well, why did you start looking into it? Well, we've talked about it. I've been interested in it for a number of years. And so then why did we change? And really what it came down to is people were getting errors and not telling us, and just hitting the continue without save, or save file continue, or whatever. And then eventually, they get this, and, would you like to save a recovery file? And for us, this is what happens. That's not our model, but we had a project that crashed with many missing elements. We could not recover it. Apparently all of the backups that we had, so everybody's local files, all the snapshots that we were taking inside of Revit server, all the server backups, everything had been corrupt, but somehow people had been working for 2 days. And we didn't know that this had been a problem until it exploded. And of course, we found this out on Tuesday, and the deadline for the project was Friday. And it was this huge issue because we had literally had to go back to the client hat in hand and say, we're sorry, we had technical issues. Can you give us a few more days to finish the project? And so that was the place where like, okay, this isn't acceptable. We can't continue down this road and lose hours and face and everything else. So, so that's kind of like, hey, we need to fix this. Otherwise people are walking out the door, right? So if you know me, and if you know Bill DeBevick, who works with me, we kind of like, hey, we're gonna go figure this out on our own and do some stuff. And so we started figuring out, like, went to a couple of working sessions with Dynamo and this and that, and like, okay, we can do this, but it was such a manual, tedious process that we really didn't see it much better than that Excel file. So yeah, maybe it automatically populates it, but it was still hours of work and a tedious process. And so Bill goes, hey, I think Clarity does that. And I had been introduced to Clarity, ironically, back at HMC, and we looked at it, and at the time it was like, oh, this is a file sharing collaboration platform. So I just kind of wrote it off, and Bill's like, no, we should go talk to him. So I reluctantly talked to Matt and Mark, and they showed me what they were doing with metrics. And I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting, but it's not where we need it to be. And to me, it became a really great partnership because we started saying, okay, well, we'll buy Clarity and we'll start doing some stuff. It was mostly Bill and I, kind of senior people doing something in the summer, got 10 projects working, got kind of a decent flow of what was going on. We realized that in order for us to look at the data the way we wanted to, that we had to do a pivot table because all the data coming into Clarity was in a vertical columns and we needed it in horizontal rows. Sounds silly, but Bill figured out how to do that in an SQL lookup, was doing that once a day. And then eventually, we talked to Matt and we talked to Joe, and they're like, yeah, we can do that. And they built it into the product, which is better because now it's happening instantly. And now we have a good engagement on how we want to see the data. So, we started out with seeing data and seeing projects and having this kind of what we started talking about as a proactive approach. So we built this Tableau dashboard based on all the Clarity data. And it really was what I refer to as a back of house tool. So high school and college, I worked at Disneyland. Front of house is on stage. Everything has to look fine. back of house is off stage, things would be burning, people would fall in, terrible garbage water, and you would walk across the stage just like everything was fine, and then you would, scream and run afterwards. So I've kind of taken that approach to work where, on the technology side, a lot of the stuff is our back of house tools. This is way too messy. You would never show this to a project team, let alone a principal. But this helped to inform us, like, hey, we should be looking at 1703520 is project number. That's Agnew's middle school, elementary school, middle school, and high school. And really, these are all floating up here because, hey, there's, I don't know, 80 some odd files all linked together, multi-acre campus, multiple phases. It's a beast of a project. But this started to give us those back of house tools to like really figure out what was going on. And empirically, it was producing all of the data that we were looking at in Excel. And we continue to have conversations with whether it was Kenny at TK1, who has a deeper background and understanding of the engineering side, or whether it was Mark and Matt about other clients. And so one of the things that I point to here that we learned from using Clarity was we started to find this weird connection between number of reference planes being high and file open time being high. And we dug into it, and lo and behold, the more reference planes you have in a project, the more it impacts your project performance, the slower your project goes. And it basically just comes down to hosting and all sorts of other fun things, right? But I didn't know that before. And the number of people that I've told that to afterwards are like, I never knew that, but yeah, it kind of makes sense. So we found that we've invested time and energy in helping to guide and direct the product to be more informative to what we're looking for. But we're also getting that same benefit from other Clarity customers coming in and saying, hey, here's something you should pay attention to. Here's other things you should do. So for us, the primary role of Clarity was to look at these metrics and start to really understand what's going on. Secondary role, yes, we use it every night to export CAD files, to print PDFs. That's been really helpful for project teams as well. But like I said at the beginning, it was Bill and I, and we moved fast, figured things out, and broke things. And so we put in 10 projects. It all worked great. And we're like, okay, do exactly the same thing. Hey, Bill, can you write SQL query and throw in 200 projects? And we did it overnight, and everything exploded. Everything was failing. Matt and Joe were great trying to help us figure it out, but it really just came down to we went way too fast. So we actually went out and we hired an intern and said, hey, 3 months, we need you to help us figure out how to put these in, structure them into groups so that everything goes along. Hired an intern right out of high school. 3.5 years later, he's still here. He's a good, productive member of our team. And that's really kind of helped with this care and feeding. He's not expensive, but he's helping us for these lower level things. And then ultimately he's saving up money so he can go on to university and pursue a career in architecture. It's just something that he needed that additional boost to do. So it's a really kind of a great story for us, LPA and IMAGINiT partnering, and then us finding, those lesser served people in our industry in the area to really find a way to help bring them up. So adoption and implementation, for us, this was kind of the easy initial graphic to go through of like, basically we were just looking at file size and open time. And if you have a really long open time and a really big file size, that was really problematic. And then open time, if that was just high, we would reach out to those. But we did find things like we had a healthcare project, or it was a higher ed lab project, and it was the largest file in the company. And it was hanging out over here. And it's like, what the heck is going on? You're only in schematic design. Why do you have a 700 megabyte file? And lo and behold, the lab consultant decided that they needed to model gas cocks, padlock hasps, drawer hardware, hinges, everything. And it was like, if we keep going down this road for the rest of the project, we will crash. So we were able to find those things just by helping us to focus on specific projects and kind of letting these other ones like, okay, those are probably okay. We've gone through a whole bunch of iterations of like, what does this mean and how do we communicate it to people, and starting to put things into buckets. We did a whole education series for project managers so that they knew when we're reaching out to your project team, this is what it means and this is why it's important. But they still were very dense tools. So we've just kept kind of going down to like, here's the big 8 and how can we reach out to people, and then going through like project outreaches and what do we need to do with people. And we're trying to get those front of house tools and really just get them in front of people and let them be more proactive themselves so that they would see things and change their habits. And in the first, well, this is part of a presentation from 2017. And this was an easy, like we could very empirically show this is what we were saving, because we're talking about opening times at a very basic, and a lot of the opening times, like we had one pop up this morning where somebody imported some random CAD file into the structural model, and then the structural model takes a super long time to open, and then lo and behold, because the structural model takes a long time to open, has a gigantic CAD file, all the views in the architecture model go to wireframe. It's a Revit feature. So we're able to capture these things really quickly. And, roughly we're probably saving hundreds or thousands of hours of just annoyance time. It might not be easily capturable because what people would do in these, as 10 minutes takes, it takes a file 10 minutes to open. They would be writing emails or surfing the web or doing something else. It's not really valuable. It was very distracting to people, but we're seeing huge kind of benefits from just the initial rollout. So kind of Mark asked about what's in the future for you, and I would say actually the future is for us has been in the last 12 months, and starting to look at how can we better engage. And so what do we have to like not do, scroll through 10 different pages in Tableau. So we hired a great guy by the name of Alexis, figured out how to take those measurements, turn them into alerts, take the alerts, put them into this is Teams. And so it starts to generate a card, and then it gets assigned to people, and the card will automatically close itself if the team resolves the issue. And we started putting in the dashboard into the project so people can see what's going on in your project and how are you doing, and here's the warning lights that are going on. I mean, ironically, this is what I sketched out with one of our principals 6 years ago, but we're finally at a place where we can easily take 10, 20 things that Clarity's looking at it for us, pull those in and turn that into a single warning light that is engaging to the project team. And then if you click on that link, it takes you to an intranet site that starts to explain the different pieces. And all of these things are kind of addressed in our onboarding training. So in conjunction with this going deeper and everybody going home for COVID and everything, we've started doing these onboarding emails where if you get hired by LPA, you get a targeted, focused, what you should be doing for your discipline and for your role every week for the first 2 months. And this is one of those things where it just goes through and like, hey, this is what you'll see in a Revit project. This is why it's important, and continuing to go down through there. So, for us, the future is kind of now for a lot of the things that we're doing. We're really getting more engaged and showing a lot more connectivity and having the project teams engage more. But the more that we can kind of automate some of those cleanups and really kind of connect these things up into business intelligence. So we've got a number of Tableau and Power BI dashboards like everybody else does, but how do you really consolidate that information and show it to a principal or a project manager in a way that they can understand? So we're kind of going through that with our transition from our current ERP system and Tableau to our new ERP system and Power BI. So that's kind of our journey, why things are important to us. For us, the health checks, because you have all the disciplines in-house, really became problematic. And when you look at the things that have changed since, I think it was Revit 2010-ish or so, when you would start taking almost the full weight of a linked file in, as opposed to a portion of the weight of the file, we've really seen a big impact on what that means. So the structural model is messy, everybody suffers. The structural model is good, everybody benefits. So this has really helped us to focus the project team's time, or the group within Inspire Design, which is our kind of unified technology group at LPA, and that's IT, which is service desk and systems. It's information, which is databases and business intelligence, and then this part is the design technology side. So it's really helped us focus our design technology efforts in where do we need to focus education so that people know how to not do something in the future. Where do we need to remediate a project so that it makes it all the way through and doesn't crash? And where else can we improve on there? So, if you are looking at whether it's clarity or anything, right? What do you need in order to be successful? And I mean, for us, it was really about hiring the right people and patience. So Holden helped to do a lot of the just grunt work of, hey, we need somebody to put in 10 projects and watch it and make sure everything is working, and that we didn't, forget to fill out a path right for something, or we didn't put 500 projects all to run at the same time and then be surprised that they don't succeed, and being patient that, I would love to roll everything perfect out to everybody, but it just doesn't work, right? So you have to kind of be patient as you go through that. And then ultimately, again, hiring the right people, getting Alexis on board to help us really engage, using Dynamo and Python and all the other, fun programming things that he brought to the table, as a depth of experience in, to really kind of make those ideas shine. And as we go forward, I think we'll see more automation about these dashboards, better ways for people to engage, but really it's all sitting on the back end of the Clarity database. That's been really helpful for us. We've also looked at, just looking at other future random things, using Clarity for detecting network health problems. If you can do a repeated task and you know how long it should take, and you run it off of a remote server in another studio, if it should normally take 5 minutes and it takes 10, that will start to indicate, network performance issues. So we're really kind of looking at what else can we use Clarity for, to automate tasks for us, so that we're able to focus our time on the places that we need to, as opposed to just, going, and I know it's a dirty word now, but going and pulling up SolarWinds reports on a regular basis, or having to go and like, hey, things are broken. Now let's go look at SolarWinds. It's more about where should we look and what should we look at. So that's about it for us. I think, like I said, I've partnered a lot with Kenny at TK1 about developing Project Health here, and then also doing collaboration. So I'm interested to see where they've kind of matured in that model as well. But that's it for me. Mark?
Well, thank you, Nick. That was very, very informative. Before we move into our Q&A session, I would like to remind you all that today's webinar was part one of our three-part series. We will be back here again next week on March 4th to hear how HMC architects utilize Clarity to enable remote workflows, and again on March 11th to learn how TK1SC enhances project delivery and collaboration with Clarity.